Hi kids, welcome back to Mr. Tim's classroom. I know it's been a very challenging time for you. No doubt you've been in front of screens a lot. I just hope that your eyes aren't turning square. I just thought today I might share a little video on creative writing. So I want to give you 7 tips to really improve your creative writing skills. Shall we do it together? Alright kids, my first tip is start with excitement. I'm sure you guys know of the 7 steps to writing and the sizzling starts, right? Nothing more boring than a story that begins with one sunny day, or once upon a time, or many years ago. So we start with excitement, kids, so that we can really engage the reader or hook the reader from the beginning. So there's a couple of techniques that you can use. You can begin with dialogue. Dialogue is speech, so one of your characters speaking. You could begin with a rhetorical question, something like, have you ever felt really scared? You could begin with sound. This is also known as onomatopoeia, so sound words are very popular. You could describe the character. Maybe you could say something like, Max the Builder was a big, burly character with a twisted moustache and a glint in his eye. Great way to start. You could describe the setting, or probably one of my favorites is you could start with some action. So kids, that's my first tip. Avoid once upon a time, one sunny day, many years ago, on a cold winter's morning. Doesn't really make the reader want to read on. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, variety is the key. Not only, kids, should we use a variety of sentence structure, simple, compound, complex, we should use a variety of vocabulary, right? Because this really helps to keep the reader engaged. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's not difficult to read. You want the reader to be able to flow over the words and get the meaning, get the characters, get the plot without too much effort, right? That's why using variety is really important. Now, we can actually slow events down and we can speed them up too with our sentence structure. Let's have a look at this example. So, let's have a look at this. Slowing events. So, Jack stood still in the hallway. He could sense the beast lurking behind him. He raised his weapon, took a deep breath, and turned to face his captor. He took aim and fired. Okay, that's quite slow, isn't it? It really paints the picture in a lot slower way than if we did it like this. This is really speeding it up. Look, Jack stopped, turned, raised his weapon, took aim and fired. Right? So you can see, you can get a feeling that there's more urgency in the second part, in the speeded up events, than there is here. So, number 2, kids, variety is the key. Okay kids, time for tip number 3. You know what? Getting started is sometimes the hardest part. I remember when I was a kid, I really found it hard to get started, and I used to write the same story basically over and over again. So, what can we do? We can ask a what if question, right? A what if question is just a short question that basically summarizes the whole plot of a story, right? Let's have a look at this example. So, imagine, what if you woke up one morning and all your furniture was floating? That'd be very weird, wouldn't it? Or this one. What if you'd been selected for the first intergalactic school space mission to Mars, but you slept in? What if questions are a really good way, guys, just to stimulate your imagination and at least to get something down on paper. Because you know what? You need a map to get where you want to go, right? So, what if questions is tip number 3. Tip number 4, and I really think this might be the most important one, avoid tied words. Do you know how annoyed teachers get when they see words like nice and big and small and thing and stuff and got and said and went and good and bad? Try to avoid those words, kids. I'm sure you've all got a thesaurus, right? Thesaurus is not some kind of dinosaur, roar, like a stegosaurus. Thesaurus is a kind of book that you use that you can get synonyms. So if you want a word for big, you go into the thesaurus, you go to big, and there will be lots and lots of alternative words that you can use. Let's have a look at this example, right? Alice went down the hill. Okay, the boring word there is went. How many different ways could Alice go down the hill? She could march down the hill. She could skip down the hill. She could stroll down the hill. She could ride down the hill. She could skate down the hill. She could roll down the hill. She could stagger down the hill. So many alternatives. Try to avoid went. You don't really need it. That's tip number 4. Okay, kids, tip number 5. Include figurative language. Have you heard of figurative language before? Techniques like simile is when you compare one thing to another using like a or as a. Metaphor is when you compare, but we don't worry about the like or as. We just say something is something else or was something else. Personification is when you give a non-living thing or a non-human thing a human quality. Let's imagine that we're writing a story about, I don't know, some pirates out at sea, okay? And we want to describe the sea. Maybe the sea was really wild and rough. So we can say, the sea was like a washing machine, churning, white water moving around, dangerous. Now, if we want to turn that into a metaphor, we can say the sea was a washing machine. We get rid of the like a, okay? Now, if we want to play around with personification, we want to bring the sea to life, we could say something like this. We could say the old pirate ship was swallowed up by the swell. So the swell is like the big waves. So swallowed is not a characteristic that a sea can have, right? People can swallow. So kids, play with figurative language. That's tip number 5. All right, kids, tip number 6. I love this one. Show, not tell. You know, really great writers are able to paint a very clear picture in the reader's mind. This is done with language. So if you always tell the reader the emotion of the character, they don't need to do any work. They don't need to visualize anything in their mind. And is that going to be a successful story? Is that how we're going to paint a picture, by telling the reader exactly what's going on all the time? Or do we want to leave it to the imagination of the reader? Of course, that's what we want to do, right? That's how we engage them and entertain them. So let's look at these couple of sentences. This one says, Sam was miserable. Now, is that show or is that tell? Of course, that's tell. Okay, we're telling the reader how Sam feels. Let's have a look at this one. Sam's eyes welled with tears. He buried his face in his trembling hands and began to sob uncontrollably. Obviously, kids, this is show. And you'll notice I didn't mention anything about being miserable or being sad, but you know, because of the language, that Sam is very, very unhappy. In fact, he's miserable. So kids, try to show, not tell. Doesn't mean all the time, but try from time to time to show, not tell. Okay? That's number 6. All right, kids, tip number 7. This is our last one. Build the noun group. We want our sentences to sound interesting, right? And descriptive. So we need to include, do you know what they're called? Adjectives. Let's have a look at this sentence together, okay? The house slid into the river. Okay, it's all right, nothing wrong with it. But we haven't got any descriptive words before house or before river. So what we can do is, I like to call these noun pyramids, or you can call them noun volcanoes, whatever you want to call them. So you can actually physically do this at the beginning, but then after a while, you do it up here, so you don't have to do it on paper. But let's look at the noun, the house. So what we're going to do, we put it at the top of our pyramid and we drop down. So we say house, then we say the house, and then we think of an adjective. How do I want to describe this house? Okay, the derelict house. Derelict means like run down, falling apart, very old. Okay, I want to add something else. The derelict blue house. Why not? Could be. So now what we do, kids, is we use this in this position. Okay? Let's do the same thing with river. So we start with river, the river. How could we describe a river? Well, the clear river, and then I've added another one, the crystal clear river. And then we add it here. So this becomes a whole new sentence. Let's read it one more time. The derelict blue house slid into the crystal clear river. Doesn't that sound much better? So number 7, kids, is build the noun group. Okay, kids, that's my 7 tips for creative writing. I hope you found them useful. Shall we look at them one more time? First one, start with excitement. Second one, variety is the key. Third one, when you're getting started, ask some what-if questions. Number 4, avoid those tired, boring words. Number 5, include figurative language. And number 6, show, not tell. And number 7, try to build the noun group. There you go, kids. I hope you found that useful. I hope to see you back in Mr. Tim's classroom again soon. Take care and stay positive. Bye for now.